Hi, I'm Brandon Dorr, Creativity and Media Innovation Reporter at Ad Age. Welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief podcast, our weekly discussion of news and trends that have the industry buzzing. This week, we're joined by Andrea Gilman, Chief Marketing Officer of Early Warning Services, the network operator of Zelle and Paze. She joins the podcast to talk about how she's adopted new marketing tactics as she's positioned Zelle to be a more emotionally resonant brand. We also get into Gen Z behavioral changes she's observed this year and how AI showed up in a recent Zelle campaign, When It Counts. Here's that conversation now. Andrea Gilman, welcome to the Marketer's Brief podcast.
Hi, Brandon. It's so great to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to talk a little bit about your role. You've been in the CMO seat for a little more than 2 years right now. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you do, what your focus is as CMO these days?
Sure, absolutely. I am the CMO at Early Warning. We are the network operator of Zelle and the recently launched Paze. Our background, though, our legacy for over 35 years is we've been helping thousands of banks, community banks, and credit unions open up bank accounts for their consumers and also protect people from fraud.
And you have a lot of history at MasterCard before you stepped in. I think I saw it was like 13 years or so.
Actually, Brandon, it was 21.
Oh, wow. Okay, it
Woo!
goes much further than than I saw on LinkedIn. So you are even more experienced in financial service marketing than I was originally going to say. I feel like anecdotally, I have been seeing the marketing within this category get a little bit better lately, like a little bit more creative, maybe a little bit more ambitious. I'm curious, I guess, just what you make of marketing in the category right now, if that's something you feel like you're seeing as well, or if you disagree.
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. And I think, it kind of goes a little bit to the history and the legacy of marketing and kind of how I got started, right? So I actually, but you mentioned this too. I started my career at Time Inc., where I really became schooled in the discipline of direct marketing, digital marketing, measure, quantify, test, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I joined MasterCard, that was around the time we had just launched the Priceless campaign, which I'm sure everybody here remembers. And this was all this idea around storytelling that really resonates with consumers. And I saw the power of that emotionally connecting with people. And I think that is something that financial services marketers have also really taken a hold of. And we'll talk about this today. That's certainly true in the campaign we just launched for Zelle, and also certainly true for the campaign we launched when we launched Pace just over a year ago.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that Zelle work called When It Counts. We
Yeah.
covered it pretty recently. Yeah, that came out this month, right? Or was it in August?
Yes, no, it just came
It
out
was in September.
in September, and we are excited to bring that story out to the world.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that campaign and ultimately what its goal is?
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. So everything we do in terms of our marketing and campaigns is really about, of course, increasing awareness and things like that, but also building that trust and preference with consumers. And so Zelle has been on a real fascinating journey. We launched Zelle in 2017, and you may have seen that last year we surpassed over $1 trillion in volume. And so, as we started thinking about the new Zelle campaign, historically, our focus has been really on making sure people know what Zelle is and how it works, all the great benefits. It comes from your bank and credit union. The money goes pretty much instantly right into your bank account, and it's there and available for use. And so, the way we started thinking about this campaign and the way we built the brief is by doing some really enlightening consumer research and other party research with a company called Nonfiction. And what we discovered were some really universal truths. First and foremost, Brandon, there is such strong brand love for Zelle overall. And I can tell you all kinds of stories as when I first came into Early Warning and the reactions I got from people. And we saw that that definitely holds true when we were doing this kind of research. We also learned that people value Zelle so much that nearly 1 in 3 people say they would switch their bank or community bank or credit union to a new one if they didn't offer Zelle. So that's a really strong testament to how much people value this product or service. And then as we started talking to people and consumers about how they use Zelle, it really plays such a strong emotional kind of role in people's lives. Over half of people say they would turn to Zelle when they needed to help out a friend or a loved one in a moment of need. We also heard stories of people using Zelle to spread joy or send a very special thank you. So Zelle really plays this very, very important role in people's lives and how they interact with friends and loved ones.
Now, I know your partnerships with local financial institutions, banks, credit unions are really important for how you market locally as well as, scaling that more broadly. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to local marketing and how that worked with this most recent campaign?
Yeah, I mean, this is so fundamental to everything we do, Brandon. And, just taking a step back and thinking about when people receive messages from their bank or community bank or credit union, they are very likely to pay attention, right? This is the place where they trust with their regular paycheck, their life savings, their college savings, et cetera, et cetera. So everything that we do is really focused on creating a very strong and compelling consumer brand campaign that can then be amplified and echoed through the banks with their end consumer. And it just gives people this very strong sense of, wow, this is really a product and service that I know and can trust because it comes to me from my preferred bank.
Now, this campaign recognizes, I think, a shift that you guys have seen with Zelle, right? You talk about just like the sheer number of payment volume there was last year. And I think again, like this campaign recognizes the shift that Zelle has seen into becoming like a cultural brand, right? Like to Zelle, someone is a verb, and you talk about how commonly it is used during crises and when people are struggling financially, and then like the emotional connections they sort of form to the brand through that as Zell has become more of a cultural, I guess not emotionally charged, but like a brand that people care about. Can you talk a little bit about how you have maybe shifted the marketing for the brand to reflect that growth?
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. So when we first launched in 2017, and for many years after that, we were really talking about kind of how Zelle worked. So people could understand, they could send it to a lot of different people, even if they weren't at the same bank, and how available the money was going to be in their bank account and things like that. As we kind of step into this new time for us, we really embarked on what we think of as a very, very different emotional territory. And really, what we wanted to do was through the power of authentic storytelling, tell all these little vignettes about how Zelle is showing up in people's lives. And so that was really kind of the whole genesis and crux of the campaign brief was to go out there through powerful emotional storytelling and show people how Zelle shows up in people's lives and supports them and how they want to show care. So we think of Zelle as a way also, Brandon, to really show an act of care to people that are important in your life.
As you've made that change in terms of creative messaging, have you made any changes to the media plan or Zell's media strategy as well to accommodate how you've changed the creative approach?
I mean, a little bit. We're finding that people today really want to show and see their brand showing up much more so in digital and social than ever before. So certainly that is critically important. I think the other thing that we're working on, Brandon, is more and more to make sure that we have a unified, multi-channel, integrated campaign that is showing up not just in the channels that early warning and the Zelle team are looking after, but through our bank channels. And so that has been such an important point, is making sure that we're enabling our assets and our creative to be available to all of the banks that are on our network. And I think it's really a very, very powerful combination when you're seeing the same types of messaging showing up across all these channels in a really consistent and emotional and heartfelt way for people.
Speaking, I guess, of social becoming more important for you guys, I think digital payment companies like Zelle tend to they have to be, I think, more in touch with the behavior of, young millennials, older Gen Z who might use their services, maybe more than other categories might have to pay attention to that behavior. Is there any behavioral shift that you guys have observed with Gen Z this year? And if so, can you talk about maybe how you've accommodated or how you've changed market to accommodate that shift in behavior?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're really focused. If you go to our heart and our core, we are an innovation company, and we are like the innovation arm of all the banks and community banks across the United States. And we think that resonates really, really well about what we're seeing with Gen Z, as they are highly open to new technologies and trends. This is a group of consumers that really enjoys trying new technologies. And so combining this kind of innovation with the trust that people feel with their bank and credit union, we think is a really powerful combination and resonates really, really well with Gen Z.
What would you say, I guess, is the greatest challenge to reaching Gen Z right now? And how do you guys approach overcoming that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, Brandon, I think you can probably ask anybody this question, and I'm sure you get a lot of answers around the proliferation of all the channels, the media, the TV shows, the streaming, all the things, all the different kinds of media that we're all trying to keep up with. So I think, with that fragmentation of screens and media and people on multiple screens at the same time, right? We've seen all that. And so, really, to our quarter, our strategy is having this consistent messaging that shows up so people recognize what the brand stands for and how they show up in people's lives is absolutely critically important. So, that's really something that we think a lot about every day when we come to work.
I'm really curious from a media channel perspective. I like to ask pretty much everyone this. Are there any channels or platforms that you guys really have your eyes on right now as potentially a place where Zelle or any of the brands under early warning can really grow?
I mean, we're doing a lot of things across, as I said, across all the different screens and really working to keep a very balanced. I think the thing that also is important for us, Brandon, is as we think about just the traditional media, but also kind of the power of the partnership. We already talked about the bank channel. Zelle is also a partner of LAFC, the football club in LA, which is a wonderful team. And they're kind of brand ethos and what they believe in and what they stand for is very, very much in line with Zelle. And we have a wonderful partnership there. So we're also working on how do we show up in live events. And we have some really fun things going on there. Things like, you can use Zelle to settle up in the 70th minute of the game and really just showing people how like their passions can be kind of lived out and fulfilled through financial services products is another kind of key layer that we are really focused on.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of sports marketing start to ramp up right now. I think we just had a story go up in particular about FIFA World Cup marketing. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, your approach to sports this year more broadly? I know obviously like that's always a space where financial services has shown up really strongly.
Yeah. I think, kind of fundamental to all of this is when people are watching a sporting event, and Brandon, I grew up with a bunch of sports enthusiasts. I don't know kind of where you fall in terms of sports
There's a
love.
couple hardcore ones. My younger brother is very into sports, so I occasionally try to keep up to the best of my ability. Often
All
fall
right.
behind, but I try.
Well, I know I know what it's like, Brendan. I'm laughing because my brother was a sports fanatic, and I can't tell you how many times at the dinner table my father and brother would talk about sports and the latest stats and things like that. But I think that's just really, and I grew up, by the way, in New England, so a lot of talk about the New England Patriots and the Boston Red Sox and Celtics and all that kind of stuff. And just there's just such a strong love for these local teams, and people watch and pay attention and really care, right? So we know that. We know that their attention is very focused on the teams, very focused on what's happening, very focused on the players and what they do on the field, off the field, et cetera, et cetera. So actually today we are announcing a very special partnership with the Atlanta Hawks and Paze. We are going to be on their jersey. And so that's just another kind of step that we're taking across our properties to really be where the fans are and really to kind of get out this message of love for the financial services products that we represent.
I'm really curious, how do you decide, just considering, I guess, how fragmented culture and media is right now and people's interests, which fandoms, I guess, for lack of a better word, are worth leaning into, which are too niche?
Yeah, I think it's really about, we want to show up where our consumers want to see us. And, first we talked about this idea of aligning in terms of kind of ethos and belief systems and principles. That's really, really important. The second thing that, we always take a look at is what are our goals for each of our products and services, and what are their goals, and what can they kind of help us with and enable. So that's really, really important, whether it be awareness or driving transactions or things like that. So I would say each one of these is very, very unique depending on the brand and the partnership that we're looking at. But it really comes down at the end of the day, like so much in marketing, to the audiences that we want to resonate with and the goals that we have for the business.
Andrea, I'm really curious, what are some tech trends that you have on your radar right now?
Yeah, so Brandon, I think we could joke and say that there's hardly a conversation that happens today in marketing where people don't talk about AI. And so, really, this idea of balancing authentic storytelling and these rich partnerships with innovation and technology is super important for us. And, obviously, we're a technology company, so making sure that we are staying on top of and working for ways to leverage AI is really, really important to us. And that's something that we've started to infuse throughout all of our marketing, everything from creative development through to, customization and personalization. So we've been talking to our agency partners and working with them in terms of how you can leverage AI and even concept development, and just like how quickly, Brandon, things can come to life using AI. It's really, really powerful, and what that does and how that shows up in creative. So I think that is something that we've been really taking a look at and working with in partnership with our agencies. Another thing when we think about AI, and a lot of folks have talked about this too, but just the opportunity to personalize and customize content and creatives in many, many different ways, whether it be for different audiences or in our case, for our different banks and credit unions. So, Brandon, on the Zelle network, we have over 2,300 banks and credit unions. And think about, for instance, the power of being able to take our unifying brand campaign, but then customize it so it shows that it's from an individual consumer's bank or credit union is incredibly powerful. So we're really thinking about AI as a way to energize all that we do. It can help in everything, as we said, from brief writing to coming up with concepts for creative, all the way through to how these campaigns are delivered much more powerfully and resonate with consumers in the marketplace. And that to me is really, really exciting.
Maybe we can talk about an example really quick. Can you talk about some of the ways that AI found its way into the workflows for when it counts?
Yeah, we actually used AI to really flesh out some of the kind of the campaigns and what they would look like. And then we took some of those concepts and were able to share them with consumers and get some feedback. And it just made it all come to life so much more quickly and easily. We did not use AI in the actual campaign production, but it really helped us kind of bring it to life and get some really quick feedback from consumers in terms of which stories resonated, which kind of connected with them, and things like that.
All right, Andrea, I think that is sadly all we have time for today. So I will just say thank you, of course, once again for joining us here on the Marketer's Brief.
Brandon, I really enjoyed our time together today. Thank you so, so much.
That was Andrea Gilman, Chief Marketing Officer at Early Warning Services. I'm Brandon Dorr, Creativity and Media Innovation Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Ciardio, and invite you to subscribe to the Marketer's Brief podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We promise to keep it brief.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.